So now you can go back.
Okay. So thank you for that. So we are waiting. We are only three. Since we covered some few properties last time, some few like 2 of them, I can remind you, based on some of these questions, just look at the properties of this sample. The first one, you can remember that the codes, and also these codes have their own properties. So one of the things that we said is that the perpendicular bisector of the chord of the circle passes through the center of the circle. If this is the chord AB and we are bisecting this line AB into 2, then the line that bisects it must pass through the center of the circle. The part B was the perpendicular drawn from the center.
Yes. Hello. Yes.
Okay. Let's start from where we stopped. Maybe others will. Others will join along the way. We discussed the measures that have been adopted to reduce income inequality in Uganda. And we said that when they ask you to explain the measures that have been adopted, we use what we call the recent past tense or the present perfect tense. And that would help us answer that question. And so we don't expect you to use something like ing when you're answering such a question. And then we also say that you need to mention the measure, you put a full stop, and then you explain how that measure inequality, how it has been manipulated to be able to reduce inequality in Uganda. Now, we say that same measure can be turned into a different tense. The same question can be asked in a different way. They can ask, for instance, they can say, explain the measures that are being taken to reduce income inequality in Uganda. So in that case, what we use there is what we call the present continuous tense. And the present continuous tense in that case entails using ing or the noun tense for that matter. Annette, you're welcome. Yes, Annette. Annette?
Yes, teacher.
Annette.
That one, teacher.
Hello?
Hello.
You're welcome. Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I was just giving a review. Yes, I was just giving a review of what we discussed the other day. We said when they ask you to explain the measures being taken to reduce income inequality in Uganda or in your country, because your country is Uganda, you're living in Uganda, you use those same measures that we discussed, but you know what's tense. Okay? Even in your stating, someone is next to some chicken there. I wish you'd move away from that chicken because it's making a lot of noise. or you can chase the chicken away. Okay. When you're,
So let us see what
who is next to the chicken? Ochukwu, are you the one?
I've muted
Ochukwu?
it.
You muted the chicken. Okay. It's interesting. Now, we are saying, yes, Stephen, you're welcome. We're saying that you turn those points into present continuous tense. When you're stating, it has been present continuous. And when you are explaining as well, it has been present continuous. Likewise, they can ask you a more, what you call in future tense. They will say, suggest the measures that should be taken to reduce income inequality in Uganda or in your country. Now, when they say suggest, that is a suggestive question, which requires you to give command points. The measures must be command in nature, okay? Because you are advising the government of Uganda. This, if you do this, this will happen. You can see the language changes to will, should, may, and can. That's what you can use to be able to arrive at that answer. And the approach is very clear there. The question is suggestive, advisory, and we strictly use can, may, and should. So that is what we call the future tense. Last time I highlighted on a few things. No, in this particular subject, we are very serious on the tense because many of us will forget our tenses. So you better use the tenses for that particular question. If the question requires you to use present continuous, please use present continuous. If the question requires you to use a recent past or what we call a present perfect, please go ahead and use that particular. If the question requires you to use future tense, future may tomorrow, okay? The speculative language is will, should, can, may, and so on. That is speculative language. So you are allowed to use that if the question requires you to use that particular. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Are you saying something?
No.
Okay. Lazea, I've seen you. You're welcome. Okay. So, any questions? Any questions before we proceed? Annette? Annette?
Yes, teacher.
Any question? Any question?
No.
Any question? Anything to be clarified? No. Lazea, Consulate?
No question.
Any question?
No.
Fine. Now, we agreed you have a test on Tuesday, right? We have a test on Tuesday. I just want to remind you before we do what? Before we end the lesson, you must be aware the topic is very simple: income inequality. The whole of it. So you read it up to the end. Okay? Is it okay, members?
Yes.
It is going to be online, and please be ready for it. I've just told you only income inequality. Be ready for that test. Then there is that particular question that the review question I gave you. Why is there a need to reduce income inequality in Uganda? Why is there a need? Nowadays, the questions are asked in that format. Why is there a need? They don't ask you direct question such that you get confused. So how are we going to answer that question? We are going to turn the disadvantages, okay, into reasons. We go back and look at the disadvantages of income inequality, turn them into reasons, and that will answer that particular question. Why is there a need to reduce income inequality? And of course, once again, we don't explain a lot. What is very important is you explain clearly, showing clearly, okay, how the income inequality maybe checks on rural urban migration. Okay, why is there a need to reduce income inequality? Why is there a need? Because we know the problem, income inequality, we said leads to what we call rural urban migration and its associated evils. Okay, so you explain, please show to us, show to the person who has given you the question that you can be able to explain. Explaining can take you about 3-4 pages. Sorry, 2 to 3 lines, that will be enough. Sandra, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Sandra? Okay. Now, I think at consumption and saving, I hope we all have the notes. Because today I won't project. I'm using my phone. I'm not using the computer. Okay. Do you have the notes? Consumption and saving? Can I get an answer? Annette? 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 Do you have the notes of on consumption and saving? Yes? Hello? So they have told you that this number here is Annette. Hello? Okay. So the intro is applying. Ochuku. Ochuku. Did you copy the notes on consumption and saving?
Yes, you had sent them to me. I copied.
Okay, that's good. Sandra, did you copy the notes on consumption and saving?
Yes.
Good. Annette, did you copy notes on consumption and saving? Because I'm not going to project today. Yes? Annette? Did you copy the notes on consumption and saving? Good.
Yes.
The last one is Stephen, did you copy the notes? Stephen? Stephen is not talking, or he's not getting me. Okay. If we have all copied the notes, we are going to go through it, and then we see how to proceed. Now we're looking at consumption and saving. Many times we talk about consumption. You hear people talk about saving, but what is the meaning of consumption itself? What is the meaning of consumption? How do you define consumption? Okay, which is very simple. Okay. Very, very simple. Consumption refers to the total expenditure on final goods and services. I repeat, consumption refers to the total expenditure generate satisfaction which generates satisfaction in the current period. That is consumption. Okay. Of course, there is that introduction which says consumption involves the using up of resources so that they are not available in future. You use the in the future. That is what consumption. When they ask you what is consumption, which generates fraction in the current. Let's not get lost. Now that gives us that formula there. The formula D equals to C plus S. Y subscript D equals to C plus S. Now, that Y has to be capital Y, not a small y, because capital Y in economics means income. And when you add that D, disposable income. Now, YD is disposable income. C is consumption and S is saving. Hence that formula. Now, let's not forget that there are certain things that have been held constant. Now, there are certain factors that have been held constant. They have been considered to be equal. That's why we have that formula. However, if you go in depth, you will see that people consume so many things. They spend on leisure and many other things you can name them, okay? But in that case, we say disposable income equals to consumption plus saving, okay? Of course, we know what disposable income is. The income that is available to individuals for consumption and saving after compulsory payments have been deducted. Okay, that is what disposable income is. Now, in that formula, you can turn that formula into any form you like by making any of those variables a subject. You can make C a subject, like you can see there, consumption equals to YD minus S. So you can say C equals to Y. There are different types of consumption. But for our level here, we are going to look at only two. And those two types of consumption, one of them is autonomous consumption. And in the other type of consumption is induced consumption. What is autonomous consumption? When someone says autonomous, some of these terms, they are very common in economics. When you are talking about economics, you must know them. So when someone says autonomous consumption, you should know what it means. When someone says induced consumption, okay, or you will hear of it, induced investment, what does it mean? Okay, but for this case, we are discussing consumption. So autonomous consumption refers to the consumption which does not depend on the level of income. It refers to the consumption which does not, the consumption expenditure which does not depend on the level of income. What does it mean? It means that even at zero income, someone can consume. Now, where does the person get the money from to consume goods and services? This person can be able to borrow from a friend or from any, finance institution, microfinance, local, okay, or from the bank, and many others. That is borrowing, okay? So it means the person is not earning income, but the person has borrowed money for consumption. Another source of income for consumption in that case can be from the past savings. The person may be living on the past savings. Okay. For instance, when you go back and look at what happened during the lockdown last year, you see that majority of the people were staying home. Majority of people were not earning income because the different organizations had stopped paying their wages. Why? Because of, the companies were not making profits, were not working. You see, so many people were living on their past savings. They were not earning income. Okay. Now that type of income is what we call, or that type of consumption expenditure is what we call autonomous expenditure. Sorry, yes, autonomous consumption expenditure. That is what we call, or that is how we call it. Okay. Now, please, you take note of that. It is the consumption expenditure which does not depend on the level of income. So it means even at zero income, someone is able to consume goods and services. Now, the next type of consumption is induced consumption. What does it mean? Now, induced consumption refers to one where consumption expenditure depends on the level of income. Refers to one where consumption expenditure depends on the level of income. Therefore, any change, when it depends on the level of income, any change in income creates what we call a change in the level of induced consumption. If one's income reduces by a certain margin, it means even his consumption expenditure will reduce. If one's level of income increases, consumption will increase. His consumption expenditure, his expenditure on consumption is what? Will increase. So that is the meaning of induced consumption. You need to be aware of that. Okay? So when they ask you to distinguish between the two, autonomous consumption is one where consumption expenditure depends on the level of income. It means even at zero income, someone spends. Now, where does the person get the money from? The person gets the money from the past savings, or the person is able to borrow from somewhere and is able to spend on consumption. Now, that is autonomous consumption. Whereas induced consumption is one where consumption expenditure depends on the level of income. Okay? So a decrease in the level of income of an individual means that this person will also reduce on his or her consumption expenditure. An increase in the level of income of an individual means that this person is also going to be in position to increase the consumption expenditure. Now, something else we need to know about induced consumption is that it depends on the marginal propensity to consume, MPC. I said something about marginal propensity to consume the other day when we discussed, but I can still repeat it. What is MPC? Marginal propensity to consume refers to the fraction, the proportion, okay, of the additional income that is spent on consumption. I repeat, marginal propensity to consume refers to the proportion of an individual's additional income that is spent on consumption. That is MPC. Now, induced consumption depends on MPC, or depends on the marginal propensity to consume. Now, because we have now got the difference between autonomous consumption and induced consumption, when you want to get the total consumption is equal to autonomous consumption plus induced consumption. Total consumption is given by autonomous consumption plus induced consumption. Now, there is that equation there. total consumption equals to C naught plus BYD. I repeat, total consumption equals to C naught plus BYD. Now, the C naught is what autonomous consumption. Of course, when I say C naught, I mean C subscript, not. Not is the zero there. And then we have BYD. Now, the BYD, that variable B stands for MPC. Stands for MPC, which is marginal propensity to consume. YD is what we call the disposable income. YD is disposable income. Okay. Now that variable, that expression BYD is termed as induced consumption. Okay. So when what is very important, or what you should note here, is that when you state a given formula in economics, you should be able to define those variables, because people may not know those variables. Define them. If it is C naught, what is C naught? C naught refers to autonomous consumption. If it is BYD, it is induced consumption. What is B in itself? B is MPC, and YD is what we call the disposable income. But that Y is supposed to be in capital letters. Okay. Now, we can be able to calculate the total consumption. You can be able to calculate the value of induced consumption. You can be able to calculate the value of autonomous consumption. In case you are given any, because you have the formula there. Now, some people have run away. There's that example there. We are going to calculate that. Today, I'm not calculating for you. We are going to calculate by ourselves. So I hope you have a calculator near you there. You calculate and you write in your book, so shall confirm the answer. Okay, the example is given us, given that a country has MPC of 80% or 0.8, comma, autonomous consumption is 40 billion shillings, and disposable income is 75 billion shillings. Calculate Roman 1, induced consumption, Roman 2, total consumption. Can we calculate that? Hello, let's calculate. Yes. Okay. Annette? 13 aluminium. Annette. Aluminium. Aluminium is Annette. L-U-M-I-N-I. That's aluminium. Annette.
Okay. So I want you to look
at Ochuku.
And the symbol is A.
Hello?
Hello? This is okay. That is the way you write small letters.
Yeah, yes. I'm waiting for the results. Annette, are you calculating? So you calculate for Roman 1, and then you calculate for Roman 2 also. Annette? 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 Sandra?
Yes.
Are you calculating?
Yes.
Okay, I'm waiting for the results. First, calculate Roman 1. Remember, whatever you're calculating will be in your books. So where you call the yes. Annette?
Yeah.
Are you calculating? Are you calculating?
Yes.
Hey, I'm waiting for the results.
The segment you're looking at is really single capital. So BC is the code. So you are not the difference between a segment and another segment. The reason that's why they not this one which are subtended stand for as S. S. Let's see.
Roman 1. Yes.
There.
Annette, give us a Roman 1.
If you have the line if you have also this
Annette. Annette.
Sorry, because of the
So
Yes. But hello?
have you got a difference? All right, so
Annette?
Say that this
Choco.
Yes.
Hello? Hey, what's the result for Roman 1? The result for Roman 1?
75 million shillings.
No, that is the value for disposable income. It was given to us. Ochoko, how do you calculate induced consumption? Yes? Annette, I'm not getting you clearly.
BC is a
600.
code. No, we don't have a major code. We just have.
How did you get? Yes?
Not 600.
You're not clear. How did you get 600? Yes? Annette?
No,
It is what?
60.
Hello? 60 billion. Okay, 60 billion shillings. Okay? Ochuku, are we together there? Okay, Sandra, explain to us, how did you get 60 billion? How did you get 60 billion?
I use this formula for total consumption equals to total mass consumption plus induced consumption. You don't have the total consumption, which is 40 plus 0.8 is the 75. I got 100 billion. That's the total consumption. So you come and replace here, where in your formula. So it will be 100 equals to 40 plus the consumption, and I got 60 billion. Yes, that's
Okay.
A line that is drawn.
Now, actually, you need to, but if you go back, Ochoko, let's go back to the formula. The formula says total equals autonomous consumption plus induced consumption. Now, the total consumption equals C naught plus BYD. Now, BYD, what is BYD? BYD is induced consumption. Okay? Are we okay, members? Okuchuku?
Now, it creates
induced consumption is given by BYD, isn't it?
Is what we call that major segment.
Yes.
Induced consumption equals to BYD. And the question is requires us to calculate induced consumption. Now, can you calculate that? And give us an answer. I hope you have a calculator. I'm giving you just a few seconds.
Then those angles are for instance, if I go that, let me just go this.
Ochoko, what do we get?
I have that. And I have this.
Ochoko.
Teacher. When I had calculated the total consumption, which I did by adding 70,
now
that is the disposable income and the autonomous state. That from the formula, I subtracted 40 billion, which gave me 75.
No, that is not right. Okay?
The value of
Ochoko.
Yes.
Yes, Annette.
what the value of manifest to Sanga to
What's the value of what?
MPC.
The value of MPC was given us 80%. And MPC 80, not 8. It is there in the notes. You don't have your notes there? Hello?
Teacher? Yes.
Are you sure you're following your notes? Because if the question is in your notes and you're not seeing it. Now, let me take you back. Induced consumption equals to BYD. BYD. That B, that variable B, Ochoko, that B there is the MPC. YD is disposable income. Now, the MPC has been given us 80% and what? And the disposable income is 75. Just multiply those two and give us the induced consumption. Okay? You multiply and give us the answer. You say induced consumption equals to BYD. Yeah? When you multiply, what do we get? What is the value there?
It's a billion shillings.
60 billion shillings, isn't it?